Elijah was 39 years old, a man whose life was measured in the steady rhythm of beeping machines and the soft hiss of oxygen. As a respiratory therapist at Richmond Community Hospital, he earned $72,000 a year, a salary built on 12-hour shifts, missed holidays, and the profound satisfaction of helping people breathe. His hands, calloused from gripping ambu bags and adjusting ventilator tubes, were gentle and sure. His life was one of quiet, essential service. But at home, in the charming but modest two-bedroom row house in Church Hill he'd bought for $280,000 5 years ago, the air was growing thin. His wife, Renee, whom he had loved for her vibrant energy and ambitious spirit, was suffocating him with a weight he could no longer bear. The expectations of her family. The devastating situation had crept up on him, not like a sudden illness, but like a chronic one, a slow tightening in his chest that had become a constant state of being. Her family, the Sinclairs, were West End money, or at least they had been. Now their specialty import business was failing, and they looked to Elijah not as a son-in-law, but as a resource to be tapped, a line of credit to be extended. He was the stable, working-class foundation they planned to drill into until they hit bedrock, or he broke. He had no idea that Renee had already made the decision to break him. He thought their arguments were just that, arguments. He thought her pleas were born of desperation, not calculation. He was wrong. The foundation of his life, the financial security he had meticulously built on his steady, humble salary, was about to be shattered by a single, elegant signature that was not his own. Have you ever felt like you were being asked to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm? It's a lonely, cold feeling, and it's where Elijah's story begins. Let us know in the comments if you've ever had to choose between your own well-being and someone else's demands, and stick with us to see how Elijah's choice changed everything. The facade of their life was beautiful, carefully constructed by Renee. Their home on North 25th Street was a testament to Elijah's hard work and Renee's expensive taste. He'd spent weekends stripping paint from the 100-year-old banisters and refinishing the original heart pine floors himself. She'd filled the space with items that seemed to mock his labor. A $6,000 leather sofa from Crate and Barrel, a $3,000 antique Persian rug, and a collection of abstract art from a local gallery that cost more than his 2012 Toyota Camry, a car with 187,000 miles on it that he planned to drive until it disintegrated. He'd paid $8,000 for it cash. Dinners at her parents' house were exercises in quiet humiliation. The Sinclair home was a 5,000-square-foot brick colonial in the West End, a fortress of old money valued at $1.2 million. Her father, Harrison Sinclair, was a tall, imposing black man with a booming voice and a wardrobe of $800 custom-tailored suits. He would hold court in his leather-bound study, a glass of 20-year-old Macallan Scotch, $300 a bottle, in his hand, and speak of market fluctuations and supply chain issues as if they were grand battles he was fighting. Elijah, in his $150 suit from Men's Warehouse, would nod along, feeling like an observer in a life he was supposed to be part of. "The problem is liquidity, Eli," Harrison would say, not looking at him, but at the polished mahogany of his desk. "We have assets, of course, the inventory, the warehouse, but the banks, they're tight. They don't see the vision." Renee's mother, Eleanor, was even more dismissive, in a quieter, more cutting way. She was a woman whose luminous, deep brown skin was meticulously maintained with $100 jars of La Mer cream. She would glide through her home in silk caftans that cost more than Elijah's monthly mortgage payment of $1,600. During one dinner, she'd examined his hands, which were clean but permanently marked by his work. "Such capable hands," she'd murmured, her tone making it sound like an insult. Renee tells me you're a breath technician? I'm a respiratory therapist, Eleanor, Elijah had corrected gently. Of course. So vital, she'd replied, her eyes already scanning the room for someone more important to talk to. Renee would always defend them later, in the car, on the way back to their side of the city. They're just under a lot of pressure, baby. Sinclair Lux Imports has been in our family for 3 generations. It's their legacy. A legacy built on debt, from what I can tell, Elijah had said once, a rare moment of sharpness in his voice. They'd just been subjected to another hour-long monologue about the need for a capital infusion to secure a new line of European ceramics. Renee's face had hardened. That's not fair. They're entrepreneurs. They take risks. It's something you wouldn't understand, working your 9 to 5. It's a 12-hour shift 3 to 4 times a week, including nights and weekends, he'd said, his voice flat. And it pays our bills. It paid the down payment on our house. It bought that $900 purse on the seat between us. She'd clutched the Marc Jacobs bag as if he'd threatened to snatch it. The silence that followed was heavy and cold, a familiar blanket they pulled over the cracks in their marriage. He loved her, but he was beginning to realize he didn't recognize the person she became when her family was involved. She was a Sinclair first and his wife second. He had no idea how far she would go to protect that legacy, or that she was willing to sacrifice his future to do it. The domestic normalcy of their life was a carefully curated stage, and the final act was about to begin without his knowledge. The betrayal escalated over 6 months, a rising tide of pressure that began with small requests and ended with a demand that felt like a threat. It started in the spring, with Renee asking for $5,000. It's just to help Daddy make payroll, she'd said, her voice light, as if she were asking for grocery money. The new shipment is delayed at customs, and it's a temporary cash flow issue. Elijah, trusting and wanting to be a supportive husband, transferred the money from his personal savings account, an account he'd been building with overtime shifts, hoping to one day replace his aging Camry. The $5,000 represented 70 hours of his life, of his breath given to others. He never saw it again. A month later, it was $10,000. This time, the reason was a critical equipment repair at their warehouse. The main forklift is down, Eli. They can't unload anything. It's an emergency. He hesitated this time. Renee, that's a lot of money. My savings are almost gone. It's an investment in our future, she'd insisted, her voice rising. When the business turns around, we'll be set for life. Don't you see that? You have to think bigger. He saw his own future shrinking. He saw the new car disappearing, the small vacation they'd talked about evaporating. But he saw the desperate look in his wife's eyes, and he relented. He transferred the money, feeling a sick knot form in his stomach. The $10,000 was 138 hours of his life. The arguments began in earnest when the request became more audacious. Her father, Harrison, started calling him directly, bypassing Renee. His calls were a mix of condescending business jargon and veiled insults. Elijah, my boy, we're looking at a bridge loan, just a small one. $100K to tide us over until the fall collection lands. With your stable income and credit, you'd be the perfect co-signer. Harrison, I can't do that, Elijah said firmly. His credit score was a pristine 810, a number he'd cultivated with years of diligent, on-time payments. It was his financial armor. My salary is $72,000. No bank would approve me as a co-signer on a loan that large, and I wouldn't be comfortable with it even if they would. Harrison had laughed, a short, barking sound. 72,000? Is that all? My God. Well, every little bit helps, I suppose. Just think about it, son. It's for family. When he told Renee about the call, she exploded. It wasn't the explosion he expected. She wasn't angry at her father. She was furious with him. You embarrassed me, she shouted, pacing their living room. The afternoon light from the bay window illuminated the dust motes dancing in the tense air. You made me look like I married a man with no ambition, no loyalty. Loyalty? Renee, he's asking me to risk financial ruin for his failing business. That's not loyalty, that's recklessness. It's my family's legacy. It's a business, and it's not being run well, he shot back, his voice finally rising to match hers. They're living in a $1.2 million house and driving $100,000 cars while asking a man who makes $72K a year to bail them out. Does that make any sense to you? You don't get it. You've never gotten it, she cried, tears of frustration streaming down her face. Her beautiful, deep brown skin was flushed with anger. You're content with your little job and your little house. You have no vision, no pride in anything beyond your own small world. The final devastating confrontation happened 2 weeks before his world fell apart. She came to him with a sheaf of papers, her face set with a grim determination he'd never seen before. I've spoken to a private lender, she said, her voice cold and even. They're willing to work with us. They've approved a loan for $340,000. It's enough to solve everything. All you have to do is sign. He looked at the papers, then back at her, his heart pounding. No, Renee, the answer is no. We've talked about this. I will not sign that. She stared at him, her eyes narrowing. This isn't about the money anymore, is it? This is about your pride. Your stubborn, working man's pride. You can't stand that my family has something you don't. This has nothing to do with pride, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. This is about common sense. This is about protecting the life we've built. This is about protecting me, because it's my name, my credit, my future on that line. She took a step closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. You have to make a choice, Elijah. It's my family, or it's your pride. You can't have both. If you don't sign this, if you choose your own selfish needs over us, over me, then you're nothing to me. You'll be a man who had a chance to be part of something great and chose to be small instead. She threw the papers onto the $300 coffee table he'd bought from a local craftsman. Pick them over your pride, or you're nothing. He looked at her, the woman he had promised to love and cherish, and for the first time, he saw a stranger. A cold, calculating stranger who saw him not as a partner, but as a tool. Then I guess I'm nothing, he said softly. He thought that was the end of it. He thought he had drawn a line in the sand, a boundary of self-respect she would not cross. He had made a critical mistake. He had underestimated her desperation, and he had underestimated her capacity for betrayal. The discovery came not with a bang, but with a buzz. At 7:14 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, Elijah's phone vibrated on the nightstand. He was already awake, lying in the gray pre-dawn light, the space beside him in their queen-sized bed cold. Renee had been sleeping in the guest room for a week, a silent, punishing war being waged from across the hall. He reached for the phone, a $400 Google Pixel 6, expecting a notification from the hospital about a shift change. Instead, he saw the email notification that made his blood run cold. The subject line was from his credit monitoring service, a $20 a month subscription he considered essential. It read, "Credit alert. A new account has been opened." His heart started a frantic, heavy rhythm against his ribs. He never opened new accounts. He was methodical, careful. He swiped the notification, his thumb trembling slightly. The app loaded, its cheerful blue and white interface a stark contrast to the dread coiling in his gut. And there it was, a new entry under his open accounts, listed in stark, undeniable black text. Lender, Sterling Private Capital. Account type, business loan. Balance, $340,000. Date opened, 3 days ago. $340,000. The number didn't seem real. It was an impossible, astronomical sum, more than his house was worth, more than 4 times his annual salary. He felt a wave of nausea, the kind he saw in patients just before they coded. The room seemed to tilt, the faint light from the window warping at the edges. He sat bolt upright, the sheets pooling around his waist. It had to be a mistake, a clerical error, identity theft by a stranger. He clicked on the details, his mind desperately searching for a rational explanation. The app offered a link to view the originating documents. He tapped it, his breath held tight in his chest. A PDF began to download. It felt like it took an eternity. Finally, the document materialized on his screen. It was a standard loan agreement, dense with legal text. He scrolled frantically past the boilerplate, his eyes searching for the signature page. And then he saw it. At the bottom of the last page, above his neatly typed name and address, was a signature. A flowing, confident script that was a near-perfect imitation of his own. It was his name, written in a hand he did not recognize. And next to it, her signature, Renee Sinclair Hayes, co-borrower. He stared at the forgery, at the gentle curve of the E, the sharp peak of the J. It was a masterful fake, but it was wrong. The pressure was too even, the loops too perfect. His own signature was quicker, messier, the product of a man who signed a dozen charts a shift. This was the careful, deliberate work of a thief, his wife. A single, cold thought cut through the panic. The date of the signing. It was dated last Friday at 2:30 in the afternoon. He felt a strange, chilling sense of calm descend upon him. He knew, with absolute, unshakable certainty, where he had been last Friday at 2:30 p.m. He hadn't been in some lender's office on the West End. He had been standing in the ICU at Richmond Community Hospital, at the bedside of a 60-year-old woman with acute respiratory distress syndrome. He had been fighting to keep her alive. And he could prove it. The quiet devastation of the moment was absolute. The woman he loved had tried to ruin him, and in her arrogance, she had made a mistake that would ruin her instead. The hours that followed the discovery were the longest of Elijah's life. A cold, methodical rage began to burn away the initial shock, leaving behind a core of diamond-hard resolve. He did not confront Renee. He did not scream or shout or break things. He got out of bed, showered, and put on his navy blue scrubs, the familiar $60 uniform a source of strange comfort. He moved through their house like a ghost, his mind a whirring engine of calculation. This was the beginning of the playing dumb phase, a period of strategic restraint that felt like holding his breath underwater. Renee came into the kitchen as he was making coffee, her face a mask of weary indifference. She was dressed in a $200 Lululemon athletic set, ready for a yoga class he knew cost $40 per session. She didn't look at him, just moved to the expensive $700 Nespresso machine on the counter. "Morning," she mumbled. "Morning," he replied, his voice even, betraying none of the chaos inside him. He watched her reflection in the polished chrome of the machine. The woman who had condemned him to a lifetime of debt was now selecting a Voluto pod. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it stole the air from his lungs. "Sleep well?" he asked, the words tasting like ash. "Fine," she said, not turning around. "I'm meeting Mom for lunch after my class. Don't wait up for dinner." "Okay," he said. He had to force himself to act normal, to sip his coffee from his favorite $20 ceramic mug. Every mundane detail of their life now seemed tainted, a prop in a play where he was the only one who didn't know his part. He wanted to grab her, to shake her, to scream, "How could you?" But he knew, with chilling certainty, that any emotional outburst would be a mistake. She would twist it, use it against him, paint him as unhinged. No. His response had to be as cold and precise as a surgeon's scalpel. Later that morning, at the hospital, he found a quiet moment between patient rounds. He sat in the staff break room, the air thick with the smell of burnt microwave popcorn, and made his first call. He called the number for Sterling Private Capital, listed on the loan document. He gave them his name and asked to speak to the loan officer who handled his account. "Ah, yes, Mr. Hayes," a slick voice said on the other end. "John Fleming. A pleasure. I trust the funds were dispersed to your satisfaction?" "I'm just calling to confirm some details for my records," Elijah said, his voice a marvel of calm. "Could you tell me the exact time of the signing appointment last Friday?" There was a rustle of papers. "Of course. Let's see. Here it is. Friday at 2:30 p.m. You and Mrs. Sinclair Hayes were here in our office on West Broad Street." "And you saw me sign the document?" Elijah asked, his knuckles white as he gripped his phone. "Absolutely," Fleming said cheerfully. "Saw it with my own two eyes. A big day for Sinclair Lux Imports. A fine family, the Sinclairs." "Thank you. You've been very helpful," Elijah said and hung up. He now had a name. John Fleming. A witness who would have to perjure himself to back up the lie. The next scene in his silent play took place that evening. He came home from his 12-hour shift, his body aching with fatigue, his mind sharp as a tack. Renee was on the phone in the living room, curled up on the $6,000 sofa, laughing. He could hear her side of the conversation. "No, Mama. Everything's fine." "Yes? It's all taken care of. He's fine with it. He just needed to see the bigger picture." She was talking about him. She was lying to her mother, painting a picture of a compliant, supportive husband. The lie was a scene in itself, a performance for an audience of one. When she saw him standing in the doorway, she quickly ended the call. "Hey, you," she said, her voice bright and false. "Long day?" "The usual," he said, dropping his worn-out $9 backpack by the door. He looked at her, really looked at her, and felt a profound sense of loss. He was grieving a marriage that had already died, and she didn't even know it. He decided to probe, just a little, to see how deep the deception went. "I was thinking," he said, walking to the fridge and pulling out a bottle of water, "about your family's business. Is everything okay now, financially?" He saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Panic? Suspicion? Before it was smoothed over with a dazzling smile. "Oh yes, baby, it's all working out. Daddy found a private investor, a real angel. Things are finally looking up, an investor." That was the story she was going with. She looked him straight in the eye and delivered a lie so blatant, so utterly without shame, that it solidified his resolve. There would be no reconciliation. There would be no second chances. He was not just gathering evidence against a criminal. He was documenting the character of the woman he had married. Each lie she told was another nail in the coffin of their life together, another exhibit in the case he was building in the silent, cold courtroom of his mind. He just had to keep playing his part until all the pieces were in place. The shift from victim to strategist happened over the next 48 hours. Elijah's grief and rage cooled into a single, focused purpose: justice. It would not be loud or vengeful. It would be quiet, thorough, and based on irrefutable facts. His first official step was a call to a name he got from his hospital's employee assistance program, Sarah Jenkins, an attorney specializing in financial fraud. Her office was in a modest building downtown, a world away from the gleaming glass towers, where deals like the one that ensnared him were made. The consultation fee was $300, which he paid with his debit card. Sarah was a sharp, no-nonsense black woman in her 50s with a warm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her office was filled with law books, and a single vibrant painting of a garden that seemed to promise growth and new beginnings. Elijah sat across from her heavy oak desk and laid out the story in a calm, flat voice. He didn't editorialize or get emotional. He simply stated the facts, the loan amount, the date, the lender, the forgery. He showed her the PDF on his phone. She listened intently, her fingers steepled under her chin. When he finished, she nodded slowly. "This is bank fraud, Mr. Hayes, a federal offense. Your wife and her family, and potentially the loan officer, have committed a serious crime." She paused. "The first thing we need is indisputable proof that you were not at that signing. You said you were at work?" "Yes," Elijah said. "I was in the ICU from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. last Friday." "Can you prove it?" This was the moment he had been waiting for. "Yes, I can." He explained his plan. "On Friday afternoon, around 2:45 p.m., I had to have a document notarized for a patient's family, an advance directive. Our unit secretary is a public notary. I signed her official logbook. It will have the date, the time, and my signature. My real signature." Sarah Jenkins' professional demeanor cracked, and a genuine, admiring smile broke through. "Mr. Hayes," she said, leaning forward, "that is what we call a smoking gun. It's perfect. It's a state-maintained legal document. It places you at a specific time, in a specific location, performing a specific act that is not forging your name on a loan document." Her hourly rate was $650, and in that moment, Elijah felt it was the best money he had ever spent. She outlined the plan. Step 1. Obtain a certified copy of that notary log page. Step 2. Draft a formal forgery affidavit. Step 3. File the affidavit with the lender and a police report with the Financial Crimes Unit. Once the bank receives a legally binding affidavit of forgery, she explained, their insurance and federal regulations require them to act immediately. They will launch their own internal investigation. They will freeze the funds and most likely recall the loan. The consequences for the borrowers, in this case your wife and her family's business, will be catastrophic. The word hung in the air, catastrophic. He felt no pleasure, only a grim sense of necessity. This was not revenge, it was survival. Getting the notary log was easier than he expected. He spoke to his unit manager, a woman named Brenda, who had worked with him for a decade. He didn't give her the details, only that he needed to verify his presence on the unit for a legal matter. She trusted him implicitly. Together, they went to the administrative office. He watched as the unit secretary, a kind woman named Maria, flipped through her logbook. There it was. A neat line entry, date, October the 26th. Time, 2:47 p.m. Name of senior, Elijah Hayes. Signature, his own familiar, slightly rushed scrawl. He paid the $5 fee for a certified copy. The crisp sheet of paper in his hand felt heavier than any document he had ever held. It was more than just evidence. It was his vindication. It was the truth, recorded in ink, under penalty of perjury. It was the key that would unlock him from a $340,000 cage. He had the proof. Now all that was left was to use it. The strike was executed with the cold, documented precision of a medical procedure. On Friday morning, exactly 1 week after the fraudulent signing, Elijah met his lawyer, Sarah Jenkins, at a Starbucks on Lexington Avenue, a few blocks from the downtown branch of Sterling Private Capital. He wore his only suit, the $150 one from Men's Warehouse, freshly pressed. He held a $500 leather briefcase Sarah had advised him to buy. Appearances mattered. Inside was a single file folder containing the forgery affidavit, drafted and reviewed by Sarah, and the certified copy of the hospital's notary log. "Are you ready?" Sarah asked, her voice calm over the hiss of the espresso machine. She was wearing an $800 power suit, her presence radiating an authority that gave him strength. "I'm ready," he said. He felt a profound sense of stillness, the calm at the eye of a hurricane he himself had created. They walked into the bank at precisely 10 a.m. The lobby was all marble and glass, designed to convey wealth and permanence. They were led to the office of the branch manager, a man named David Chen. He looked surprised to see Elijah accompanied by a lawyer. "Mr. Hayes, Miss Jenkins, how can I help you?" he asked, his professional smile looking strained. Sarah didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Mr. Chen, we are here to serve this institution with a formal affidavit of forgery regarding a business loan for $340,000, account number 785-22B, disbursed on October the 26th. She slid the folder across the polished desk. Chen's face went pale as he opened it. He read the affidavit first, his eyes scanning the legal language. Then he looked at the attached exhibit, the certified copy of the notary log. Elijah watched the man's expression shift from confusion to dawning horror. He saw Chen's eyes dart from the signature on the log to the loan document he pulled up on his computer screen. The difference was undeniable. "The signature on your loan document is a forgery," Sarah stated, her voice like ice. "Here is time-stamped, state-certified proof that my client was at Richmond Community Hospital at the time of the alleged signing in your offices. We have also filed a report with the Richmond Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. We expect your institution to take immediate and appropriate action to remove my client's name and liability from this fraudulent debt." Chen swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. I see. We will of course launch an immediate and thorough internal investigation." "You will do more than that," Sarah said, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. "You will place an immediate freeze on the account and all disbursed funds, and you will confirm in writing to my office by the end of the business day that Mr. Hayes has been fully and completely indemnified." The meeting lasted less than 10 minutes. As they walked out of the bank into the bright morning sunlight, Elijah felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he hadn't realized he was carrying. The first part of the strike was complete. He went home to an empty house. Renee was out, likely spending the money he had unknowingly guaranteed. He walked through the rooms, looking at the expensive objects she had filled their life with. The sofa, the rug, the art. They were just things. He went upstairs to their bedroom and pulled a simple $40 duffel bag from the closet. He packed his scrubs, a few changes of clothes, his toiletries, and the framed photo of his late mother that sat on his nightstand. It was all he needed. At 1 p.m., he sat at the kitchen table he had refinished himself and composed a short, simple email to Renee. Subject: for your records. The body of the email contained a single sentence: "I have filed the attached document with Sterling Private Capital and the Richmond Police Department." He attached the PDF of the forgery affidavit and hit send. The sound of the outgoing mail swoosh was the loudest sound he had ever heard. He stood up, picked up his duffel bag, and walked out the front door, not looking back. He had no idea what the immediate fallout would be, but he knew he wouldn't be there to see it. He drove his old Toyota Camry to a cheap $70 a night hotel near the airport. He turned his phone to silent. The storm was about to break, and for the first time in a long time, he was safely out of the rain. The cascade of consequences was swift and brutal. It began not with a roar, but with a series of digital notifications that dismantled the Sinclair empire piece by piece. The first sign of collapse came at 2:17 p.m. that Friday, just over an hour after Elijah sent the email. It was a text message to Renee from her father. Elijah would only learn of these messages later, through the divorce proceedings, but he could picture the scene with perfect clarity. "Harrison Sinclair, 2:17 p.m. Renee, call me now. The bank just froze our operating account, all of it. At Sterling Private Capital, David Chen, the branch manager, had escalated the affidavit to his corporate legal department. Their response was immediate. The $340,000 was clawed back from the Sinclair Lux Imports account. Because Harrison had already initiated transfers to pay off long overdue vendors, the account was now overdrawn by nearly $60,000. The bank, citing the fraud investigation, also froze Harrison and Eleanor's personal accounts, which were held at the same institution. The second wave hit 30 minutes later. The bank's fraud department officially recalled the loan. This triggered a clause in the Sinclair's agreement with their primary commercial lender, who had extended them a separate line of credit against their inventory. The fraud investigation constituted a default. That lender, a much larger and more ruthless institution, immediately moved to seize their collateral. Harrison Sinclair, 3:05 p.m. They're calling our line of credit, all of it. They're padlocking the warehouse. What the hell did you do? By 5 p.m., the business that had been in their family for 3 generations was effectively dead. The employees who had not been paid were sent home. The locks on the warehouse in the Scott's Addition neighborhood were changed. A notice of asset seizure was posted on the door. The new line of European ceramics, the one meant to save them, sat in shipping containers at the port, now the property of the bank. Meanwhile, Renee's world was imploding. She had received Elijah's email while getting a $200 manicure. She had stared at the PDF, her perfectly shaped eyebrows arching in disbelief, then denial, then pure, unadulterated panic. Her frantic calls to Elijah went straight to voicemail. His phone, on silent in the anonymous hotel room, lit up again and again. Voicemail 1, 1:15 p.m., angry. Elijah, what the hell is this? You call me back right now. You can't do this. This is our family you're destroying over your stupid, pathetic pride. Voicemail 2, 1:45 p.m., bargaining. Okay, baby, look, I'm sorry. I was desperate. We can fix this. Just call the bank. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Please, Eli. We can talk about it. I'll pay you back, I swear. Voicemail 3, 2:30 p.m., sobbing. They froze everything. Daddy called. The business, it's all gone. You did this. You knew this would happen. How could you be so cruel? I love you. Don't you love me? The downfall of her parents was just as swift. The recalled loan and the collapsed business triggered covenants on the mortgage for their $1.2 million West End home. With their assets frozen and their income stream vaporized, they were in immediate default. Within a month, a foreclosure notice would be nailed to their heavy oak front door. They would be forced to sell the house at a loss to a developer for $900,000 just to cover their mountain of debt. Harrison's collection of custom suits and Eleanor's jars of La Mer cream would be packed into cardboard boxes. The final personal consequence for Renee was the destruction of her own credit. As the co-signer on the fraudulent loan, the default was reported under her name. Her credit score, once a respectable 780, plummeted to below 500. She would be unable to get a credit card, rent an apartment in her own name, or finance a car for at least 7 years. She had tried to steal Elijah's financial future, and in the end, she had only succeeded in annihilating her own. She had lost the one thing her family's money could no longer buy her, a clean name and the ability to start over. The entire edifice of the Sinclair family, built on a foundation of arrogance and debt, had been brought down by a single, quiet man and a $5 certified piece of paper. A year later, the rain had stopped. Elijah stood under the warm glow of fluorescent lights in a conference room at Richmond Community Hospital, the air humming with the quiet energy of a dozen new trainees. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. No longer a symbol of tension, but of life and movement. He had moved out of the Church Hill row house, selling it and splitting the equity with Renee, as dictated by their swift, uncontested divorce. He now lived in a small, clean, one-bedroom apartment in Manchester, a $1,400 a month space with a view of the James River. It was all his. The furniture was simple, a $60 bookshelf from IKEA, a comfortable $300 armchair, but it was paid for, and it was peaceful. His life had found a new, more meaningful rhythm. After the events of the past year, his supervisors had seen a new confidence in him, a quiet authority. They had asked him to lead the mentorship program for new respiratory therapists. He was good at it. He found a deep, abiding satisfaction in teaching the next generation how to comfort a panicked patient, how to read the subtle language of a ventilator, how to be the calm center in a storm of medical crisis. His $72,000 salary now felt richer than any sum the Sinclairs had ever chased because it was earned through purpose. He was explaining the nuances of arterial blood gas interpretation when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it. An unknown number. He let it go to voicemail. He had learned the value of boundaries. After the session, he listened to the message. It was her. Renee. Her voice was different, softer, stripped of its arrogance. She was asking if they could meet for coffee. Said she needed to apologize. He thought about it for a long time. Looking out his apartment window at the sunset painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, he decided he would go. Not for her, but for himself. Forgiveness, he was learning, was the final act of taking back your own power. They met at a neutral coffee shop, a small place on Hull Street. She looked smaller somehow. Her clothes were nice but not expensive. Her hair, once always in an elaborate, professionally styled creation, was pulled back in a simple puff. She was working, she told him, as a receptionist at a dental office, making $41,000 a year. Her parents were living in a small condo in Chesterfield, paid for by a loan from a distant relative. Harrison was working as a car salesman. "I'm sorry, Eli," she said, her eyes fixed on the cheap ceramic mug in her hands. "There's no excuse for what I did. I was drowning, and I tried to pull you under with me. You were a good man, a good husband, and I threw it all away because I was raised to believe that money was the only thing that mattered. That pride, the Sinclair pride, was worth more than a person's soul." A single tear escaped and traced a path down her cheek. "You chose your pride that day, and I said that made you nothing. But I was wrong. It wasn't pride, it was self-respect, and it's everything. I lost everything because I didn't have any." He listened, and he felt not anger, not satisfaction, but a quiet, bittersweet peace. He had not destroyed her. Her own choices had. Her downfall was the consequence of her own actions. "I accept your apology, Renee," he said, his voice gentle, "and I forgive you. I hope you can build a new life." He stood up, left a $5 bill on the table for his coffee, and walked away. He didn't look back. True wealth is not measured in dollars, but in dignity. It's the quiet confidence of knowing your own worth, a currency that can't be forged or stolen. Pride, the kind the Sinclairs had, is a fragile fortress built on the opinions of others. But self-respect is a foundation, built on your own actions, your own integrity. It's the one asset that can never be seized, the one legacy that is truly yours to keep. We all face moments where we must choose between what is easy and what is right, between the demands of others and the quiet voice of our own conscience. What does true wealth mean to you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if Elijah's journey resonated with you, please like and subscribe to Love Beyond Pride for more stories of strength, integrity, and the power of self-respect.